on today's episode of Gathering the Kings.
One last piece here on this before we move on. What's one thing that the listener can be looking for, watching for? You've kind of given some showing up, obviously skill set. What's one thing that they can be looking for? You just referenced like her ambition, her desire to be at the table. What is that like? How does that look different as opposed to just somebody who wants more money and is a little bit more transactional, and once they get the piece, they kind of just end up moving on anyway because they weren't really there for the seat at the table? Like, how did you know the difference, and what can they be looking for? What's up, everybody? I'm Chaz, Wolfe, Gathering the Kings podcast. I'm your host, and I'm back today with Jay Aigner here on the King stage. My brother Jay, how we doing?
Doing great, brother. How are you?
Wonderful. It's Wednesday. We were just discussing what it feels like sometimes to wake up and I thought it was Thursday this morning. Realized I had another day.
Yes, it's always good to have another day.
Exactly, man. I love that. Love your podcast setup. Sounds like we're going to have a great conversation because you know how to do this podcast thing. Tell us what kind of business that you got, Jay.
First of all, it looks like you know how to do it better. You've got great lighting in the background. You've got this thing down to a science, man. So my job is CEO of a software testing company, JDAQA. So we work with custom software development companies. We work with SaaS companies, and we basically either are their QA team or we come in and kind of the special ops for things that they can't test, right? So if there's about to launch a big application and they need 50,000 people that are getting ready to use it, we'll come in and help make sure that it kind of can withstand that sort of load. We also do security testing to make sure that none of the bad guys can get any of your data. So that's kind of what I do in a nutshell.
Yeah, you guys are the boots on the ground in the digital space, running through a bunch of potentially not closed loops.
Yes.
You're trying to find the open loops, right?
We're the last line of defense, man. That is, we try to make sure things don't explode in your customers' hands. That's my favorite tagline.
Yeah, I love that. Tell us what kind of businesses. I mean, I'm sure you work with different types, but tell us kind of what generally makes up the clients that you work with.
Yes. So it's either companies that develop software for other companies. So they're custom software development companies. Like we have some in Philly, some in New York that they make a bunch of different products for a bunch of different companies, and we are their QA team across that portfolio. We also work directly with SaaS companies, e-commerce, real estate, basically you name it in the SaaS kind of realm, we have dealt with it before. As I love to tell people, I don't, I mean no disrespect to them when I tell them that, we've probably seen it before, right? Like nothing that they're making today is going to completely blow my head off that I've never seen before. So we've basically been in every vertical, and doing an agency like we do, you see a lot of different things. So we've just about every vertical, every industry we've been in.
Yeah. It's almost as if, you have the grand perspective and really any application, what you're saying, any sort of software piece that you guys have tested, they all kind of fit into a certain number of buckets of generally this is like this. And
yep.
We know how to do it. And I think pretty much every business kind of operates like that generally, right? Like we kind of know like, okay, my customers are going to fit into these 4 buckets or whatever. And what that should allow us to do is just get really honed in on those things. Has that been the case for you guys? When you kind of group people together, even though they're completely different industries?
100%. Yeah, and I totally agree. I mean, it's everybody likes to think they're super unique, and I mean they are to some degree. But like you said, at the end of the day, the job is a lot easier than a lot of people think because it's not finding these individual snowflakes. There's a common thread through just about every customer that you've ever had, and your job typically, if you're going to be a successful business owner, is to find that common thread, and that lets you target and then also hone your product better to serve those customer types. So it's kind of just a feedback loop that keeps going, which is a fun place to be.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept because as an entrepreneur, do you find yourself desiring change? I know a lot of entrepreneurs, even myself, where I'm always trying to iterate and become unique, and I want the next new flashy cool thing. But when you have that reality that it's like, no, actually what I need to do is just these 4 things over and over and over again and just get even better than I currently am and kind of forget about the rest, that almost sounds like a not very exciting end. But what you're saying is that like, no, actually that's how you become a master. That's how you win. Is that in essence what we're putting together here?
I think so. But at the same time, there are certain avenues in a business like marketing and sales that you can try things forever that are fun and exciting. I mean, that's basically my job at this point. Our operations layer and our execution kind of teams, they do work in a very, patterned set of execution steps. They do the same kind of thing for every client, but I get the luxury to try different things and to do different marketing opportunities and do podcasts and to do, different, just marketing's fun. And that's where I feel like the actual experiments come into play. But the business operations, the day to day, if you can make that as mundane as possible, as far as like your steps from discovery to scoping to contracts to delivery and execution, and then kind of the customer retention piece, if that can all be the same, your job becomes a lot easier and it gives you the time to go out and do these other things and experiment.
Yeah. You've mentioned a couple of things here that I want to press on, because not every entrepreneur talks like this. And so for the listeners paying attention when, they're thinking about creating systems, you've given us a really good idea of what can be systemized or maybe what should be systemized, but you kind of held off, you said sales and marketing, but even more so, you kind of heightened marketing as being like this fun, testing, trials, like, very colorful area of the business. Do you have a belief around a CEO spending time in marketing, or is that something that, CEOs can hire out? What are your just thoughts on you being CEO and in the marketing seat?
I don't like work, right? I don't like things that feel like work. And I'm a huge delegation evangelist. I think that any great entrepreneur should be a really good delegator. And I enjoy the marketing side of things, and I enjoy the sales side of things. And absolutely, can you go hire marketing people? And do I hire marketing people? Absolutely. But is it something that I keep my hands in because I enjoy it? Yes. And the same thing with sales and trying new sales avenues and trying all that stuff is fun for me. And I did heighten marketing because, making content is it's one of those things where you can certainly, the value isn't there for my hourly kind of rate for me to be doing some of these things. But if it brings me joy as a business owner to try these and see, oh, wow, we actually got a customer from trying this new tool or this new thing, that's worth my time, right? Because then I've created a new avenue for me to delegate and hand off to somebody else and kind of run that to ground. If I find that content marketing is great, if I find that LinkedIn automation is great, if I find out is some sort of, new sales mechanism is great, I'll help define that. And then I'll figure out how to hand that off to a team to kind of execute it on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I'm in 100% agreement on that. I think every CEO eventually ascends to the marketing seat. And even if they have a marketing CMO or some high-level executive, that pulse, in essence, is what you're saying, is probably the most important in the business. And it's ever-changing. To your point, that's the creativity of it. And that's kind of how most entrepreneurs are designed. Not every single one, but at some point, a CEO has to elevate their game to be able to see trends and be able to identify new opportunities, which is sales and marketing. So appreciate that perspective. I say some things, there's operators, business owners that are operators, and they like that portion of the business, and that's fine. But it's tough to operate a business if you don't have any new customers coming in the door.
Yes. Yes. Developing the operations layer is like the most underappreciated part of being going from freelancer to solopreneur to entrepreneur to like real business owner. I think like that operations layer is so important, and it is like people are scared to let control go, and they're afraid to kind of hand some of that stuff off. But man, once you are out of the operations on a day-to-day basis, you just start to fly. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that to your point before that, it gives entrepreneurs a chance to be free and creative, which typically means go get new customers, go build those relationships, go do the things that you've probably been good at naturally, but you've been held back by the operations in the day-to-day, the mundane, that you won't let go of.
Right, exactly.
I want to know, Jay, like you have a unique business here, and you obviously serve some unique clients, got a great business, but what's your why? Like, yes, I can see obviously you're an entrepreneur and you like to build, but what's the deep rooted, like what wakes you up in the morning?
Usually my kids are the ones that wake me up in the morning. No, actually not really. I get up before them now. Just so I was
going to say, is it early?
I'm a 5 a.m. guy, so like it's I try to get before them. But I mean, yeah, the obvious kind of boilerplate answer is my family. I have 5 kids and one on the way, and it's my wife is incredible, and I mean, look, I'm never going to claim to be the perfect dad or husband, but I think just being a better person every day, or trying to be, and like hearing those things from your wife or your kids about, the things that they did during their day, and just like I don't know. My daughter said to me the other day, I'm not a business coach. I'm not going to claim to be, but my brother-in-law is like trying to spin up a business, and my 7-year-old daughter, she's like, you're always helping Uncle Brandon with business. She's like, you're always telling him like suggestions and like things like that. And it just like, it made me feel great that like she's noticing that I'm helping, somebody else. And like, that's like an exciting thing for me. So just constantly trying to provide for them and be like the man, to some degree, it drives me, and it's, being physically fit and being mentally fit and being like financially sound, like all those things that you hear about growing up that, successful people do. I think that just doing that for them and then letting them see like, hard work does pay off and having my wife be able to stay home with the kids was a big thing. So like just being able to be that provider, maybe kind of a common answer, but it definitely is my driver.
Yeah, actually, you took it a slightly different direction than I think the common boilerplate. The boilerplate is, you want to provide, and it usually means, house and nice things and all the more surface level stuff. But you went deeper than that. It was more of a, like, I want to be, like you said, you called it the man, but what underneath that, what it means is that like you want to be who you're meant to be to them. You want to be the leader of the house. You want to lead your wife. You want to, provide safety for her. You want to be able to do all these things for your kids. I mean, 5 kids with 1 on the way. Like I have 4. I thought I was leading the pack here, but I have to yield to my man over here. There's a lot going on in your house. And I think for guys or ladies, but that maybe either don't have kids yet or that are maybe working up to the squad like you, it becomes just a heavier and heavier, not like weight, like oh my gosh, I have to carry the burden of a family. It becomes like more and more like real. Would you agree with this? Like no, it's like, this is not surface level for me. These are like my children. This is my legacy. I'm like trying to build them. Like,
yeah. It's not a, well, I always tell people once, and this too, but once you go from 2 to 3 kids or more than 2 kids, you have to switch from man to man to zone defense. So like after you make that switch, it just becomes like kind of, controlling the chaos, living in the chaos and kind of like being okay with it. And again, I'm the last person on earth that's going to say I'm perfect at that, but yes, it's kind of building up, I wouldn't say that they're my legacy, but I would say that there is a certain set of things you get to do on this earth and you have a certain amount of time on this earth. And I think if I can grow them up to be good contributing members of society, I'll have left the world a better place than I found it. So that's kind of, what I strive to do.
That's cool. I'm a big legacy guy, and you mentioned legacy there for a second. What is legacy to you?
Yeah, that's it, man. It's just, the way I think of it honestly is that in however many billions of years, the sun's going to explode and the earth is going to be gone and all this stuff that's here on earth is probably not going to matter, right? So like it's providing and raising kids that will hopefully be the future generation that can live, move out into other planets and grow the rest of the universe and like keep the human race going, right? It sounds very like, spacey and literally. But it's the surface level stuff as you get older and as like you have kids and stuff, like it starts to fade away. Yes, it's nice to have nice things and you want them to have nice things, but I just want my legacy to be that I was better than my parents. I was better than my dad and my family, and I wanted to my kids to look back and say, he cared about us, he spent time with us, and they keep that legacy going themselves and kind of build their own successful life would be something I'd be happy with.
Yeah, that's good, man. I want to know a little bit of your story. You said that you started this business, but what did you do before? So a big part of it was getting your wife home with the kids. What did life look like before this business?
Yeah, so I grew up in Virginia, in the middle of nowhere. Kind of had to just figure out stuff to keep myself busy, which I think is where my hobby kind of passion came from. Like I always have a million things going on. Went to school to make video games. Thought that was going to be the best thing in the world. That industry sucks. I didn't, and I went into it as a game tester for a while, and then kind of branched out and did a bunch of different things. But the direct genesis to this company was my wife was an overnight pediatric nurse, and she was pregnant, and she was like, it was crazy. And like, I mean, you want to talk about getting some perspective on life. It's like, go visit one of these places and look at these like kids that are hooked up to machines that are like never going to leave. Like that's like a crazy thing to have to go overnight and do every night. So I started looking out. I applied for Uber. Uber turned me down because my license was from Virginia still, and I lived in Pennsylvania. And like, I was looking at overnight stock boy jobs at Walmart, like to supplement the 9 to 5. I'm like, what do I do to make more money with the same amount of hours in the day? And then I went online. I found elance.com, which is now Upwork, years later. And I started doing contracts. I started picking up individual contracts. I had a problem saying no to money, and I tried to figure out, all right, if I have more contracts than I have hours in the day, that's a great problem to have, but what do I do with that? And basically from that point, I started to hire people that I used to work with. My old boss I hired to work with me and for me at another company. And, we just kind of grew out from there. And I realized as soon as I still remember the moment very clearly from running up and down the stairs. I was so excited. I figured it out. It was this company was going to pay me $50 an hour, and I was going to be paying my guy $25. And I was like, I'm going to make $25 an hour and like not have to do anything. And I thought that was the craziest, just thought to ever have. And it kind of just like exploded at that point. And now, we have 60 plus people, and we're, 3 different continents. And like that little moment though was the one where I realized like I can have other people work for me. There's margin involved. And, that was 50% margin. Now we're 60 to 80% margin. But like we really, that was the moment where I said, all right, this is a good idea. There's a business here. And it kind of just, went off from there.
Yeah. Love that. For the person that's listening right now, that moment of, I can charge 50 and I can pay 25 and I get to make 25 for nothing. It's, it is a conundrum, really. It's like, wow, this is pretty powerful. But the value in that is that you secured the client, you secured the person, you put the contract together, and it's a higher level, maneuver. It's a higher lever that you pulled, and so that therefore you get paid more. And that's how business works. So I appreciate you giving such a plain example on that. I think that's important for people to know as they begin to scale, that it's okay to do that because their value is in the scaling, right? And that's what you were doing.
My wife had the same thought. She was like, well, she's like, is this like ethical? Are you supposed to be? I'm like, this is how business works. Like, this is every business that's ever been had ever. Like there's a margin. That's why companies, charge less than they pay their employees. That's just how it works. So that moment is important.
Well, and that's why that guy worked for you, because he didn't have a client. He had the skill, but he had no client. You had the client, but you wanted to be able to help 2 clients at once. And this is just how it works. And again, you scale it up depending upon the number of people. You have obviously done a great job with that with 60 team members. What was a practical, just really good business decision that you made? Obviously, I'm sure there's been plenty with 60 people, but as you've scaled, just something super practical that you can share with the listeners.
There was a moment where I had a really good QA person working with me, and she'd been working with me for a couple of years, and she, 20, 30 hours a week. She had a 9 to 5 job, and she came to me and said, Jay, I want to keep working with you, but they're getting ready to offer me this big promotion at work. And she said, but I want to come work for you. And I didn't have any kind of full-time employees at that point. And it was a decent price tag. I mean, it was $100,000+ a year engagement that I was going to have to take out of my pocket to pay somebody to kind of work for me. And it was by far the best decision I've ever made running this business, was to bring her in as my COO. She's still my COO today. Her name's Autumn. She lives over in Ohio. Her ability to take over operations and run that was almost as important as starting a business. I mean, and I talked about it a little bit earlier, like the operations layer. It is massive to be able to hand off actual work to somebody else that doesn't need to be, completely prepared and like spend all your time getting it ready. We have a very clear process now. So that was the moment, taking the leap to eat some initial money and profit, hoping that long-term it would work out. And she's been my right hand for years now and has just helped this business in immense ways.
Yeah, that's incredible. What do you think in that moment gave you, I guess, the push? I mean, 6-figure salary, obviously a very qualified individual. there could have been ego there of like, I don't want somebody as good as me. Like so many reasons why someone listening today may have made a different decision in the past or maybe, in the future. So I'm trying to keep them from making maybe a bad decision. How in that moment, what were you thinking? Like, this is a lot of money and,
It was a lot of money. But I think I just realized something I did realize early on. I must have interviewed 1,000 plus people over the last few years just to work for me and work with me. But if you talk to enough people and you work with enough people, you identify really good people, and you don't want to do business without them, right? Like if I would have tried to do business without her, growth would have stagnated. I would have been stuck in the same spot. So it's really trusting your own ability to find people that you can work with really well, that that do a good job and can prove a good job. And conversely, I've learned first impressions in business are rarely wrong. If somebody screws up out of negligence or out of, not being fully honest at some point, and you try to give them another shot, I can almost guarantee you it's going to happen again. And I've learned that lesson, a couple times in business. But the good ones that prove themselves, that are just, ride or die, that are going to be there when you need them, that are going to go the extra mile. You gotta develop that knack of really understanding people. And that was what gave me the push. Was I knew she was great, and I knew the work she'd put in with me. And I knew that she was going to keep doing that. So I think it was just being really confident in my own ability to gauge people and to trust her, right? It was to let go of that, some of that control, like you said.
Yeah. How, this is your first major hire and you went straight for the jugular, the top, top position in your company. Walk us through that philosophy rather than thinking, well, no, I'll wait on this. I'll let her get this promotion. I'll go find somebody that can be entry level and kind of just take a couple of things from me. I'll keep doing this. Why did you go that way, top down, as opposed to bottom up?
I had some contractors already that were, kind of working with us and for us, but she was special. And I think I realized how special she was. And I realized, and nobody had ever really shown me that level of kind of trust or dedication before. So it was reciprocating that appreciation. Like she appreciated who I was and what I was doing and kind of believed in me. And, she deserved and still deserves a seat at that table where it's like, if you prove yourself, trustworthy, and that you have the fire that I have, that you're going to be there, and that 99% of the job is showing up. If you don't, I can't tell you how many times I've just blown somebody off who didn't show up. Like you're not going to get a second call or a second interview. Like just if you don't show up to something, especially in clients aren't going to care. If you don't deliver something or you don't, come to a meeting, you're saying like they don't care. It's you got to show up. So I think it was the fact that I knew she was going to show up and be a delivery based person, which is really important to me at the time. And I knew I had somebody good, and I think that's why she was pushing for that too. She's very ambitious. She wanted that role, and she wanted to be a seat at the table, and she wanted to be at the COO level. And I said, you know what, you've earned.
Yeah. One last piece here on this before we move on. What's one thing that the listener can be looking for, watching for? You've kind of given some showing up, obviously skill set. What's one thing that they can be looking for? You just referenced like her ambition, her desire to be at the table. What is that like? How does that look different as opposed to just somebody who wants more money and is a little bit more transactional? And once they get the piece, they kind of just end up moving on anyway because they weren't really there for the seat at the table. Like, how did you know the difference, and what can they be looking for?
That's a great question. I think it comes down to every interaction has to feel right, and you have to see that you have to see them put in that extra effort. You have to see, because like you said, some people are transactional, and that's fine. Some people just want to come to work, and they want to, I have plenty of contractors that they want to work their hours, they want to be done, and they're out. But if you see the people who are trying to punch upward and trying to get further up, like those aren't everybody. Like right. A lot of people can say that, but everybody does not try to be a C-level executive, which is like wild for a C-level executive. Like everybody thinks like we're like, oh yeah, like everybody wants to do it. But like there's lots of people that don't. There's lots of people who don't want to run a business. A lot of people don't want to be an entrepreneur. A lot of people don't want to be a chief operating officer. There's a lot of people that would just much rather go in, punch their card, and go home. So I think it's just recognizing the people that have that motivation and that ambition. Because, like you said, a lot of people have a lot of talk, but it's have they shown up? Have they really been there when you need them? And if they do, then you got to trust and reciprocate and appreciate these people. I think that's why people work for me, is because I try really hard to treat them like human beings. And if they're putting in work, all I have is money, right? Like it's all I can give people. I mean, I give them my love and my respect and my time, but beyond that, it's money. So you have to, pay people right, give people bonuses when they show up and when they do what they're supposed to be doing and they go above and beyond, and just treat them like human beings. And so, yeah, to answer your question, I think it's you got to identify those people that have that spark, who have that real drive to go up, because everybody doesn't have that.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of the most powerful things that you've said. You've said a lot of powerful things, but the fact that that's not everybody, that push, that kind of like constant, like they're pushing up against even you, even almost getting you out of the way.
Yeah.
That can feel wrong to an entrepreneur that has a big ego, and that'll be pushed down. But that is a glorious thing, what you're talking about, of just recognizing that and then being able to go, okay, wow, let's see what this person does with this.
Right.
Oftentimes they don't disappoint because they're, like you said, they're not like everybody else. Tell us, Jay, about a bad decision that you made. Something, again, practical that you did that just wasn't your best hour that we can learn from.
Trying to do too much, too many clients, too many deliverables. There was a client that we had some CRM application that was a pretty good client at the time, and it was great for back then. And I was running 5 or 6 contracts at the same time. I didn't give, whatever release that was supposed to go out enough attention because I was actually doing the QA work back then. Of course, the one thing that you miss is going to be the one thing that the client goes to do, and she went to do it. Her client went to use it. It broke the whole system. And, I still remember the feeling of, she actually said to me on the call, the CEO of the company, she said, this isn't, goodbye. It's just, we're going to take a break for now. And I'm like, oh God, that is just, I felt like I was getting broken up again. I was like 14 again, like losing a girlfriend. Like it was very devastating, but that stuck with me. And I try to use that motivation with my guys and say like, look, we have got to, cross every T. Because like I said, the one thing that you overlook is going to be the one thing that your client finds. So it was really just, it was burnout. It was trying to do too much at the same time. That was before I brought on really, enough contractors to help me. But it was trying to, be everything for everybody, which, you gotta know your role.
Yeah. Yeah. There's 2 pieces here, and it sounds like you did maybe a mixture of both. So I want to kind of dissect this a little bit. Because I've also been in this position where there's just, a lot going on here. And I feel like there's really 2 ways to handle it. You either retract backwards, which is someone fires you or you let a client go or 2, and you kind of just reshore up what you have, or you have to go higher, which can potentially be even more messy for a period of time. But then, of course, things stabilize. It sounds like you've done a little bit of both. What would you say to the listener is maybe a better way, or maybe a way that you did it more detailed?
Hire contractors as soon as you think you need help would be my advice.
Don't wait, meaning?
No, don't wait. Try to find things that somebody else can do for you. It's all about buying back your time. If there's any message for any of this stuff, it's just buy back your time, man. Buy it back on the day-to-day basis, on the operations side, on the whatever you can do to buy back your time to do the more important things, do it. So yes, it is 100% hire, and especially contractors, right? There's a million. We live in a remote world now. It's easier now than it was 10 years ago when I was doing this. Did you hire somebody, 1099 contractor, that can do the work that you want to do? You don't have to go in this big investment of hiring these W-2 employees all the time. Now, yes, there's certain scenarios where that makes sense, but 1099 somebody. Bring somebody in that can help take the load off your plate 10, 15, 20 hours a week, regardless of what the task is. If it's doing the actual work that you're doing, or if it's administrative stuff that you have to do, or operation stuff, like waiting to do that too long is one of the bigger, and it's easy to do. It's easy to wait, but I would say, don't slow down by, losing clients or by not accepting jobs or by doing whatever. Like, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. Like, why would you ever do that when, if you just do the math, hire somebody for cheaper, get a new client, and just kind of rinse and repeat.
Yeah. I think what could be helpful for the listener here, almost like a word picture that I've used several times. I've owned many Edible Arrangements franchises over the years, and we've got big times of the year, Valentine's Day being one of them, where we'll do just thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of strawberries. And it gets crazy because everybody wants them on the same day, and they're fresh fruit, and we can't dip them, 2 weeks in advance and freeze them or anything. So we have, just tons of people. I had 7 locations at one point, 500 plus temporary workers over a 4-day period, like just logistically a nightmare. But as I've gone through that process of developing, this thing over a 4-day period and being able to, have this machine move forward, this word picture of like, you got to be like in it, but then like you got to come up above and be able to watch what's happening. Right. And then you got to go back down. But if you stay down for too long, you're not paying attention to all the moving pieces of the machine. And this is how business works. This is not just a holiday at Edible Arrangements. In essence, what Jay has given to you guys right now is if you stay down too long, then you're going to miss the opportunity to hire the contractor because you're in it for too long. And so you gotta pop back up on a regular basis. You don't pop up for very long typically when it's in the early stages like that. You pop up, you take a look around, you make sure if you need to make any adjustments, hire a contractor like Jay's talking about, and then you go back down. But you've got to be able to know how to come up and down into the vision, because otherwise you're going to get smacked in the face with a lost contract or a whatever because you're down in the weeds and not paying attention enough. Now you can't do the opposite. You can't go up here all the time, right? Because then you have, not enough work or something's happening down below in the operations and you're not paying attention. And then you're losing all your money because I've got people standing there and no strawberries to skewer or whatever the situation. Right. So I think that what you gave is really, really powerful because we always get stuck. Like, oh my gosh, do I know? I don't know. I'll just take care of it, But it's stagnating growth. Even though you're accepting it and quote unquote doing more, what Jay's telling to you guys is like, you're just going to cut yourself off eventually because you're not growing ahead. You're not keeping your head up. Would you like to add anything to this, Jay?
No, I think you summed it up pretty well. It's and eventually, like you said, you do have the opposite problem where if you stay up too long and you're not at least tied in with your organization, you don't have to be in every project. You don't have to be, I don't know what the day-to-day stuff of some of my guys is, and that's fine. But I know the general status of all the projects, and we have, sync and the managers of those projects and I talk on a regular basis. So there is a nice little cascade of information that comes up and down from those projects. But I think your point is great of dipping your head down every now and again after you've kind of gotten out of that cycle. But certainly, hire people before and hire assistants before you think you need them.
Yeah, that's a big one. It's a big one because we think we can do it.
You think you can do everything. I mean, you can, but you can't, right?
You can. That's right. You can, and that's the problem.
You can't. You can do it all, and then you can't. Yeah, and then you can't, which is tough.
I had a guy. Tell me what you think about this. I had a guy on the podcast. I don't know, maybe 6 months or so ago, and we were same vein here. Like, yeah, you can do all things, and he's like, yeah, here's the problem is that you might be capable, but you doing all the things at the same time. If you're just being honest with yourself, looking yourself in the mirror, you can't be 100% at all of them. So you got 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10 things going on, and you're 25% on all of them at best. And so you hire the one person to do that one thing, and even though they might be 80%, and you're thinking, oh, they're not as good as me. It's like, well, no. Their 80% compared to your 25% is a way better deal.
Yes.
I'd be curious your thoughts.
Did we talk to the same person recently? I feel like I heard that story recently.
Maybe, yeah.
I'll have to figure out. But yes, that's exactly the same thing I heard. Yes, 100%. Yeah, if you're not, there's no way that you're going to do as good a job as somebody that you bring on. And like I said, even if they're not as high level as maybe you would be doing sitting down there, but you can be off doing 15 other things. Like that's the whole thing is buying your time back.
Yeah. Yep. It's good. Tell us about a business resource, maybe a book, maybe a podcast, maybe an event that you've been to, something that you've invested time and money and effort into that's been beneficial that we can go check out.
I've got 2, if that's all right.
Yeah.
The Collision Conference in Toronto, I visited for the first time last month, and that was mind-blowingly fantastic. There's 36,000 people there.
Oh.
All sorts of tech and product and all. It was an incredible resource, and I would highly recommend people check that out. As far as books go, Fanatical Prospecting by Jeb Blount is probably
great book.
I mean, even if you're not going to sit down and cold call people, just the theory behind nobody's going to sell your business for you. Like they're not, and even if you hire salespeople, like you still have to be so tuned in to like getting new business, and it's like such a big deal. And that was just one of those like, something clicked when I know I'm an Audible guy. Like I don't even, I love to like do other stuff and listen to books, but that was a huge one for me.
Yeah, I've got to echo that. A lot of the books that have been recommended on the show I have read, but that one I have read many, many, many times. One of my favorites, probably in the top 5. Jeb does an incredible job, especially for your industry where there's just much larger tickets, much more enterprise clients. Yeah. He does an incredible job of describing what that sales journey looks like. And fanatical prospecting, I love the word fanatical, intense, whatever it is, because that's like, let's just be honest, that's what it is. And if you're not like that, you're probably not going to be successful, or not for very long, at least. So
yeah, you're not crushing it if you're like mundanely trying to get prospects. Like it's a very good word.
I imagined one of your guys coming in saying, "Yeah, I'm going to mundanely send out some prospecting emails, and I'm going to mundanely."
You're out of here, buddy. You're out of here, buddy. We need fanatics only. Which fits a Philadelphia fanatic. The Philly fanatic. So that fits very well.
There you go. I have a question about family. You've got a big family. We talked about that a minute ago, but I'm a big fan of the word obsession. I don't like the word balance at all. In fact, I don't even think it exists. So you know how to obsess in your business. That's why you've been successful. Tell us how you've obsessed over your wife and over your kids at the same time, because I believe it's possible.
It's a great question and great point. Yes, it is possible. I have always, it sounds cliche, but I've always put them first. Like I can't tell you how many meetings or podcasts or whatever I've put off or rescheduled or changed or whatever so I can go, help my wife do something or go to a kid's event. Like I don't live my life for the business, but I never have. Even when I was in 9 to 5, like I never really cared. Like it was never something where it was, if my wife needed me, I was there. If I had to be for my kids, whatever doctor's appointment or for a field day or whatever, like I'm going to be there. Like it's never been a question for me. And It's funny because I'm sure maybe you can relate with this in some of your audience is like, significant others can get a little too used to that and they can assume that you have a lot more time and it almost becomes a problem with, how much you have to work when like in reality, you're not working nearly as much as anybody else on planet Earth. So it is an interesting, I'm not going to call it a problem, but it's an interesting situation you get yourself in where the people in your life, like my daughter's 7 years old, my son's 10 years old, like they haven't been away, like physically more than like a mile from me, like in the, like I'm always around, like I've worked from home, I've done whatever. So I mean, to say that I obsess is like, I'm up every morning doing breakfast, doing whatever. Like I'm here, this week they're going to camp, but when they get back, 4 o'clock onward, dad's going to be, so it's, if I'm not in this office working, and even if I am, they'll stroll in and, I'll do my little song and dance, to pretend like it's not a big deal with the person on the phone or the client that I'm talking to. But yeah, it's just constantly making sure that things are okay and things are like level in my house, and then everything else comes after that. Because I mean, making, as you know, like making money is not hard, right? Like you can make money by working whenever. And somebody said something the other day that really stuck with me. It's like, your bosses and your employees are not going to remember in 5 years that night or those nights that you stayed up late. Your kids are going to remember that you missed whatever because you weren't there because you were working, right? And that just hit me, and I was like, you know what? And being where your feet are, it's a cliche phrase too, but like I really try to do that with them and put the phone down, put work down, and just like, it doesn't matter if it's 2 PM or 2 a.m. Like I'm going to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. You said it pretty quietly, but in essence, because you give the time, and even sometimes not to say that it's not appreciated, but it's maybe expected. Because I feel the same way, especially if you work from home. The availability of my human is sometimes like, wait a second, I'm here, but I may not be all the way here all the time, But what you said underneath that was that, okay, well, but during my work time, whenever that is, throughout your process of making sure that things are even at home, you're all in. You're there, and so that way you can give the time. And maybe it means you work a little harder, or you're more focused, or you're more intense, and you got to go, run harder. But you're not going to sacrifice the obsession over here. And so I appreciate that word picture that you gave to us. I got one last question here for you, Jay. I got to know, if you had the opportunity to go back in time and whisper in the younger Jay's ear, what would you say?
Go hire people. That's what I would say. I would say go hire people. And at the time, I'd probably like, what the hell are you talking about? But again, man, it's buying your time back, and you only have so much of it in a day. Go hire people. Let go of the control, and take the risks that are associated with hiring people. Yeah. 1099 contractors are not a big risk, by the way. You can try them out. If they don't work, send them on their way. But if they do work, and you find somebody that's making you $25 for every hour they're working, like I found back then, right, would have been life-changing, right? So that's the number one thing I would tell everybody is don't be afraid to hire somebody to help. And it does with everything. Like maybe it's a painter for your bedroom, or for like doing some of that. Like, yes, it's great to do some of that stuff and like be hands-on and do whatever, but like, yeah, the amount of time you're spending like going to change an outlet in your office or something is probably going to take you 6 hours. And like, how much other stuff could you do in 6? You know what I mean? Like, and if it's as handy as you can be, like there's stuff that you should just have somebody else do. And like, landscaping, like yes, again, be hands-on, but like hire people in life to do things that free you up to spend time with your family and your business. Yeah.
Love it, man. You've dropped some amazing stuff here today. How can the listener find you? Number one, if they have a company where they're working on software projects and they need testers, or your business, how can they find you? But then also, if they're just an entrepreneur, they want to find you. They want to talk to you.
JDAQA.com. They can find me for any testing needs. My calendar is also in there. Anybody feel free to book a time. LinkedIn, huge LinkedIn guy, or Jay at JDAQA.com. Feel free to reach out. I love helping anybody I can. So appreciate your time today, Chaz. You're awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate that as well. We wish you blessings and on your family, of course, with the new one coming, it sounds like. All those cool things that you guys are putting your hands to here this year. Thanks for being here, brother.
Thanks, Chaz.